Welcome to a DeFi Dojo podcast AMA. Today, joined by co-host Mara and Karel from Union. Karel is a co-founder of a Union, has a lot of very fantastic stuff going on right now. You may have seen some of the Union ceremony things on Twitter, and you have no idea what's going on there. We're going to find out what is going on there. Welcome, Karel.
ZK happy to be here.
Thanks very much. So there are a lot of pieces of tech in the industry now that are similar to what Union is doing. We have bridges. We now have like layer 0 type bridges. We have like relayer type things, and no one really understands the tech. They're just like using it because it's easier to use. Can you explain what Union is and sort of what niche it's trying to fill in this space?
Yeah, of course. So if you kind of see bridging as a spectrum where on the one side you have just one person running a bot with a single private key, and they're basically verifying all messages. And on the other side, you have a fully decentralized network where it's two blockchains communicate with each other. Union is very close to the decentralized side. We're almost all the way at the end there with what is, from a technical perspective, possible. That has some really nice properties, mainly that you cannot really take Union down. Like if the US government orders us to shut down like Union Labs, the Union protocol itself will still keep functioning perfectly fine. And as part of that property, it's also insanely secure because the same thing that protects you against orders from being taken down protects you from North Korean hackers trying to take a crack at you. So Union kind of fulfills this cypherpunks.
That gets me super excited. So I'm like a big decentralization maxi. Mara can attest to this. And you said sort of like you are aiming for a future where even if the Union team was gone, you have these smart contracts that can still operate functionally. So are you guys trying to build like this immutable smart contract that once up is just like a piece of DeFi infrastructure forever? Are you guys using an Aave method where it's like you build it and then if you ever need to improve upon it, you're just going to do a new version? Or what is your vision in terms of decentralization?
Yeah, really what makes it so you can take it down is actually the off-chain components, which are completely different. So for example, for layer 0, you kind of need an oracle/relayer. Doesn't really matter how you phrase it, but you need an off-chain component that holds a private key to sign the messages. And obviously that server can be taken down. The person that owns that private key could lose it or could get hacked. And now the system is corrupted and then the system is bricked or you need to sign a new one. Union doesn't have that off-chain component at all. Instead, we generate zero-knowledge proofs of different blockchains and we transfer those. And what that means is, because in zero-knowledge cryptography, anyone can generate a proof. If you take down the prover that Union Labs runs, then a dev can basically set up a server for about $200 a month and start generating new proofs. So as you kind of cut down like one head of the Hydra, a new one can just pop up. And our innovation if made it cheap enough that anyone could effectively run this. So previously, for doing these types of proofs, you would need a massive amount of GPUs, a large investment in hardware. In our case, kind of hobbyists could serve this whole network. And that's how you kind of know Union will keep on running forever as long as there is transfers going around.
It kind of reminds me of the whole issues that happen. What were they called? Multi-chain, multi-swap? The bridge that, was massive and cheap last cycle. Everyone was using it because it was like kind of the cheapest, most effective way of getting funds around. And they had the biggest bridge assets for Phantom, I think specifically. And I remember, I'm not sure if like the true situation ever came out, but it was something like the founder got arrested by the Chinese government and maybe forced to give up the keys, or maybe there was some foul play or something untowards bad happened, and it pretty much wrecked Phantom at the end of last cycle. Like Phantom ETH went to pretty much zero, Phantom BTC went to zero, I think Phantom USDC and other chains that kind of depended on that bridge. And that was, I think, a massive amount of trust that people didn't realize that they had with such a small number of people. So I think it's a good point, Stephen. Like, we all use these bridges every day. We use them for, it's just easy. I'm moving funds between ecosystems, and we don't think about it until something really bad happens. So it is definitely refreshing and interesting to have someone who's taking such a kind of thoughtful approach to bridging, and one that has so few trust assumptions and, lesser dependencies. So I don't know, Karel, can you just kind of dive in and I understand you guys are using ZK Proofs. I understand you guys are using the IBC standard. Can you kind of try to explain it in relatively simple terms for us so we can understand basically like how the system works for Union?
Yeah, of course. So like you said, we use the IBC protocol, but the IBC protocol really specifies like you send a packet, you expect a certain data packet to come back from the other chain. It doesn't specify how you verify if those packets are correct or not. So you're free to implement a new verification backend. And that's how Union started out doing this. So kind of a different engine, but we had a specification that a car needed 4 wheels and a steering wheel on it. Why we leveraged CKPs initially was we wanted to bring this to Ethereum and the EVM ecosystem. And what you encountered there is that obviously the gas price is going to be much higher. So you need to work around that to get the unit economics for your product to make sense. And if you start leveraging ZKPs, what happens is you do less computation on-chain, but more computation off-chain. So your gas cost, if you do it correctly, goes down by a lot. And the more you manage to take out of the smart contracts and do off-chain, the better this goes. So that was kind of our first victory, managing to get all of that to work. And the second one was optimizing the off-chain component, the prover. Because at the time when we founded Union, these like risk zero was like already existed, but the performance wasn't too great. SP1 from Succinct Labs didn't exist. So we hand wrote the circuits and the prover to make sure that it wouldn't take 30 minutes for us to generate a ZKP. We were competing at the time, obviously, against layer 0 and such. And so we had a benchmark for transfer times that we needed to hit. So a lot of our work was actually in getting the performance high enough to make the UX comparable to more centralized purchase. When we started out, proving time was about a minute and a half. So that means that in the life cycle of a transfer, we would add at least a minute latency to each transfer while our server was spinning to generate the ZKP. Nowadays, that's about 7 seconds. So the latency has gone down by so much that I don't really think as an end user it's noticeable, since the average bridge transfer already is about a minute. So that extra 7 seconds you don't notice. And the trade-off, I think, is very good, because obviously you get all of these security guarantees and decentralization for just a little bit more bridge latency.
Can you talk to me about what's going on? So people tend to think of bridges as there's two main types of bridges. Both of them kind of do the same thing, but differently. You have a big, gigantic honeypot on one side, a big, gigantic honeypot on the other side, and it says, oh, you can take some from this one and move it over there, or you can put some into this one and we'll take some out of this one. Which is how bridge hacks happen. We saw the Nomad bridge hack. We saw the multi-chain bridge kind of exploit. We saw the bridge hack on Harmony. What was that? The Rainbow Bridge. All of these sort of had these big, gigantic honeypots. And then there's IBC tech, which tends not to have these. It tends not to have these big treasure chests that can be exploited and like rugged, so that the bridge wrapped assets can be effectively go to zero. What does Union do to prevent or mitigate or address that gigantic bridge risk factor?
Yeah. So just to correct you, by the way, like IBC technically has that honeypot as well. It's a bit harder to get to. You need to be a bit more sophisticated. And indeed, like a bridge hack fundamentally is like when you bridge, you lock up tokens, and on the other side they're minted or released or somehow. But that means that on the origin side, it's accruing in a vault, right? And if you have a lot of outflow, for example, going from Ethereum to Solana, the honeypot on Ethereum grows in size to hundreds of millions. And that's really what a hacker tries to get. Trick this vault into releasing all of these funds by, for example, faking a large transfer going from Solana to Ethereum back, so it's released. We mitigate that in 2 ways. One is it's really hard to trick the Union vaults. And that is because we use zero-knowledge cryptography and light clients. So we don't have those private keys on a server like you had with Multicoin, where basically the few servers they had I think the founders got arrested and they just didn't have access to it anymore, and people lost trust. But basically, if you got into those servers and got those private keys, you could trick the vaults into just releasing everything and take the funds. And the other portion is IBC is a bit more sophisticated than just a regular like release from tokens. It has like rate limits associated with it, circuit breakers. So basically protocols can set what they expect flows should be, right? Because no one, for example, would expect a single 1 billion transfer going from Solana to Ethereum, right? So you set a reasonable default. So in case that if there's actually something wrong with the underlying protocol. It isn't emptied out immediately. That would have saved Nomad, for example, because Nomad, and I think from an architecture perspective, a fundamentally sound protocol, but then they had a simple coding mistake in there. The team, I think, was out at conference and so unreachable. And in that time, the whole protocol got emptied out. If they had rate limits set up, then perhaps only 10% would have been taken, for example, or 20. And then you could have still salvaged the project and continue operating.
So what is the difference between what a relayer does? So I've heard people sort of argue that relayer tech doesn't rely on these underlying baskets of assets pre-existing on both sides. That rather has a mint burn mechanism. Is this true?
Yeah.
And if so, what are the pros and cons of that kind of thing?
Yeah, so IBC itself is basically mint and lock, burn and unlock, how it works in the hood. But that's effectively a mint and burn mechanism, if you want to abstract it. And what a relayer does is it observes the source chain. It'll generate a type of proof of that chain, submit it on the destination side, and then generate storage proofs for each individual transfer to trigger that the user gets their funds. At no point does the relayer actually control any of the funds. It just informs the vault what basically the new state change is. For Union, in our case, it doesn't generate just a regular proof, like what's happening in the Cosmos ecosystem, but it generates a ZKP. So our relayers, they need to have access to slightly more powerful hardware, or they can leverage proving services like RiskZero's Bonsai or Sindri to do this service for them. And then besides that, it's almost exactly the same. Another model that's slightly different for Union compared to regular IBC is that in the case for Union, relayers get a large portion of the fees. And so there's a real advantage in outcompeting other relayers. So if you have access to slightly better hardware, or you fork the relayer code base, so you make it 2% more efficient, almost like you're have a searcher bot looking for MEV opportunities, you basically start settling all Union order flow and gaining a large portion of those fees.
So can you explain the difference between a regular proof and a ZK proof to me like I am a toddler?
Yeah,
so
sure.
I know that ZK stands for zero knowledge, but I don't really know what that means.
Okay. So in the regular proof flow, effectively what an IBC relayer does is it looks at a Cosmos block, which has votes from validators. And votes really are just signatures. So there's, let's say, 100 signatures underneath that block from all the different validators saying, like, we agree with this block, we finalized it. Now you just bring this to the other chain and there you verify 100 signatures. Now, signatures are kind of computationally expensive to verify, relatively. Like not massively, but doing 100 signature verifications to do one transfer is kind of expensive, especially inside Solidity. So basically what you then wonder is, can we do this differently? Can we provide a proof that we have verified these 100 signatures without it being able to fraud this? And that's effectively what we do with ZKPs. Don't want to go in too deep technically about how ZKPs work, but you can really see this effectively as a black box where you can put an arbitrary program in and then you provide the inputs to the program. It'll run, it gives you a much shorter output. Only in our case, what is it, like 256 bytes, no matter how many signatures you verified. The downside is everything you compute in this black box takes a lot longer to compute. So normally verifying 100 signatures, like on a regular computer, takes 5 milliseconds. Inside the ZKP black box, it takes 20 seconds. Like it's really disproportionate. But the upside is, because you can verify the ZKP much cheaper, in total, we spend much less time compute on it. Because if we only compute something for, let's say, 100 milliseconds on Ethereum, it's get distributed over all the validators, right? Each validator does it for 100 milliseconds. So the total compute time across all nodes in the peer-to-peer network is much higher than the 20 seconds that we're spending locally. And that's what you see in the cost, right? It's cheaper to have one beefy server do 20 seconds of computation than the entire Ethereum network do 100 milliseconds. And that's kind of the dissymmetry that we use to get better costs.
Okay, so I understood maybe 10% of that, which is fantastic. It's a huge advantage to how much I usually understand. So what I understand, what I'm getting from this is that with a regular proofing system, it has to go through all the validators, and That might take, let's just say, 1 second per validator, but with a ZK proof, it happens one time, not every single validator, and it might happen over 10 seconds, but that's better than 1 second 100 times.
Yeah, and envision this a bit as like the same model that a ZK rollup has. Like you could build a new chain with, let's say, 1,000 validators, or you could have a ZK rollup with just one node to generate ZKPs, and both are like equally secure. We kind of do the same for bridging, where like our model requires only one node of physical infra, but it's as secure as having like all of those nodes to distribute the compute with individual stakes associated with that.
And how is security measured with this?
So you mean economic security behind this, or just how would you quantify the security?
So when you say that a system with 100 nodes is equally as secure as a system that uses ZK security, what does that mean? Like how in what respect are they equally secure?
Yeah. So technically, actually, the ZK system is more secure because it's kind of an absolute level of security, like the same way that 1 + 1 = 2. If you calculate this yourself, you simply know this to be true indisputably. Well, like a system of 100 nodes, basically all agree that it's 2, but if you don't recalculate it yourself, you have to trust 100 nodes. And the more nodes you go, the more stake you go, the more likely it is that they're going to be correct, because getting 1 million nodes to collude with each other with individual people running them is basically impossible. But ZK will still technically be more secure than that. The only thing that could occur is that there's a fundamental flaw, obviously, in your proving system, right? Like in the actual code that you've written. But to be honest, that is possible with any system that exists, right? Like it could turn out tomorrow that actually the signature schemes that we use in our wallets are fundamentally broken, and none of us realized it. And actually what we're doing is all completely moot.
Okay, that's good to know. I think I'm kind of understanding it. So I have a philosophy background. When you told me that, it makes me think that traditional validation or proofing is what we call consensus truth theory. So if everyone agrees that it's true, it's true, and so it's validated. Whereas ZK proof is more like coherence truth theory, which is you have an actual truth, and aligning with that actual truth means that it's consensus. It's true by coherence to reality, rather than true by consensus of agreement.
Yeah, and if you have a bit of a logic background, then you might find it interesting. Like you can do loads of cool things with ZKPs. So you can take 2 ZKPs and prove that both of them are true, and then generate a new ZKP out of that. And that's what we call aggregation. So that way you can basically prove an arbitrary amount of ZKPs. So you can combine many chains, for example. So Union can prove not just like the valid state of one chain, but of 100 chains with the same size ZKP. Like you can keep combining them recursively over and over and over. So that has some really nice scaling properties, whereby basically for Union to support 10,000 chains is kind of as expensive as it is to support 100 chains. Like it scales up really nicely as we get more and more rollups, more blockchains, more app chains, etc.
Now, what kind of infrastructure does a ZK proofing system need? So typically you need validators or sequencers for transactions to be, verified or affirmed. With ZK proving systems, do you need that kind of infrastructure, or is the black box itself a thing? And if so, what do we name that?
Yeah, so you basically need a fundamentally like the part that runs the black box. The prover is what we call them, because they generate a proof. They run a program that has internet access and fetches a bunch of data that goes in the proof, and then they need appropriate hardware. Like these days, a lot of proving is done on GPUs because it is a computation that parallelizes really nicely. So if you have access to a large GPU, that's good. And that's really all that you need. On top of that, Union also has a kind of decentralized sequencer network, and that's necessary for that proof aggregation. If you just do one chain to one chain, then all you need is the black box and the relayer. But if you start doing the process that I described, where you add these proofs together and start aggregating them, then there's a certain ordering dependence that arrives. And a pure ZK system with like no consensus at all cannot provide ordering, because basically A and B together, if they are true, then so is B and A, right? So for the ZK system itself, it doesn't care about ordering, but kind of the way that which you handle transfers, for example, you do need that global ordering. So you do need the sequencer network.
Okay, so sequencers literally will sequence the transactions that have been proved by the provers.
Exactly. So the sequencer has no like security assumption on it. Like they can't fraud with the transfers themselves that occur, but they are necessary to determine which one occurs first, like in what order are different chains processed.
So in this case, and this is all sort of coming back to the union ceremony thing that I was trying to participate in, but unfortunately I'm not dual booting Linux right now, and I don't have a Mac. Darn me. But when you participate in that, are you effectively spinning up a prover with your own like native GPU, or what's going on there?
No, it's slightly different. So right now we're running testnet for a while, and so on testnet we already had our whole ZK system live. But technically, the testnet ZK system is actually insecure because when you generate the smart contracts that can verify ZKPs, you need to store a verification key in each smart contract. And in the process of generating that verification key, you generate a few random numbers, which you must delete. Because if you keep those random numbers, you can later actually create fraudulent ZKPs, fraudulent proofs that the smart contract will accept, which actually are incorrect. The way you basically ensure that these numbers are thrown away, the most basic one is you just get the whole team together in a room with a brand new laptop, and you each enter a few random numbers. You generate the key, and then you smash the laptop to make sure it's deleted. But that's kind of barbaric. That's how Zcash did it. Zcash did it originally. They basically got a bunch of people together on a new laptop, and they smashed the laptop afterwards. But these days, what you do is you just have, like, let's say 3,000 people each generate a tiny part of the random numbers, then hash that, and then have the next person generate their portion. And this whole chain of people all generating random numbers is secure as long as one of the participants like correctly deletes the random number. And that's basically what our ceremony is. It's us having everyone download a program to participate in this chain, generate a random number. And the more people we have participate, the lower the chance of collusion, right? Because if I were to just, let's say, invite my VCs, my team, and my auditor, there might be a chance that I've paid all of them off, right? To basically create a fraudulent system. Like from a decentralization perspective, you guys wouldn't know if this is actually good or not. This could be a VC scam to set all of you up. But if I basically give everyone access to participate in the ceremony for a couple of months, then like you self-participate, so you know the system is secure. And that's why we have everyone tweet their contribution. Because with that little hash that you tweet, you can actually cryptographically determine that contribution is included in the final verification key.
And so this contribution is only necessary for the beginning of the mainnet, or why would it not need to exist in continuity?
So basically, at some point, we say we have enough people contribute to consider the system secure. And then we generate the verification key. Those are stored in the Solidity contracts to do bridging, and then the system can go live and function. You could technically have the ceremony keep on going. And let's say 3 months later, you say, you know what, like 30,000 people is better than 3,000 people. Let's generate new verification keys with these new contributions and update the smart contracts. You could do that. Most likely, what we will do actually is another ceremony about a year later, because that will contain all of the protocol upgrades that we've made by then. So speed improvements, other tricks that we'll have added. So we'll run a new ceremony and have people participate again to generate the keys.
Okay, so the ceremony is to create a verification key that is some important thing that will jumpstart the mainnet.
Yeah,
I'm speaking like I'm teaching a 2-year-old, but I feel like I'm missing some important piece.
Yeah, I'm like looking for a good analogy. You know how when you like generate a new private key in your wallet, like it uses an RNG, and some of these like old wallets from like 2009 or 2010, they had a bad RNG, and nowadays people are cracking them because they figured out that it is occurring, and that's why they ask you like move your BTC out of these old wallets into new wallets. Effectively, what we've set up is like a distributed RNG for the whole Union network to securely generate those first few random numbers.
Okay. All right. Cool. Awesome. Now, once Union mainnet does go live, there's a bunch of things that are going to happen. So there is the aspect of this which a lot of people are interested in, which is a potential token utility, airdrop, all of this kind of stuff. That's a big topic. Which angle of this are you most interested in talking about first?
We could cover token utility, because I think even though we all love our tokens, like you kind of need to have a reason to create one, and I think add value to the network, except for seeing cool tokens in your wallet. So in the case of Union, the main utility or a few of the main utilities, one is for the decentralized sequencer network that we spoke about. So there you can stake tokens on basically the nodes that operate to determine what the order is in which transfers are being processed. And another portion is that the Union protocol takes a BPS fee of the transfers that are ongoing, and those fees go to the token holders. So it represents actually a share in all of the productive work that the Union network does.
So effectively, there are token transfers. There's like some small fee that comes out of those, and those fees are returned to Union stakers or holders?
Stakers.
Okay, cool. So is this staking going to be done like in IBC land, or is it going to be EVM, or is Union going to be its own chain that is aligned with either one of those two?
Yeah, so we built this like decentralized sequence network on top of the Cosmos SDK. So we're leveraging like modules associated with that to do the staking. And we're actually working with a really cool project, Azure, that's doing liquid staking for the Union token. What I kind of like about them, what they're doing now is they allow you to stake and unstake from any chain that Union is supported on. So if you're basically just doing DeFi on Barret chain, you can actually just stake, unstake, get your liquid stake token without ever leaving Barret chain and immediately do stuff in DeFi with that. And this is kind of what we support on any ecosystem that Union is connected to. So theoretically, like as a user, you never actually need to interact with the Union chain itself for the Cosmos portion of it. So you can always stay in whatever ecosystem you prefer and still interact with everything we offer.
Okay, this brings us to another really interesting topic, which is Ooga Booga. You guys are incredibly Barret chain aligned. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be like the de facto bridge for Barret chain, which is massive. It's huge. It's like the most anticipated new chain that no one really knows much about. Can you tell us sort of what your relationship is with Barret chain and what that means for Union and or Barret chain?
Yeah. I mean, we've been working together with the guys for about 2 years. And just to correct, I don't think you can have de facto bridges for decentralized networks. Like we've partnered with them, and a bunch of protocols are looking to get TIA and BTC assets on top of Barret chain. But in general, it's still a decentralized network, and any other bridge can still deploy on them and operate. But we're very much geared towards basically trying to find as many flywheels with different Barret chain ecosystem projects. Bring in foreign assets. I originally, to be honest, didn't get Barret chain until we randomly went to one of their events right before they did their like 420 million raise. And I finally understood what I liked about it, which is it felt a lot like kind of the early days ICO era, or maybe like the start of DeFi summer, where you just did a whole bunch of shit for the fun of it, right? Like it made DeFi fun again. You actually want to go to the apps daily because you want to interact with the apps themselves. As well as after working a lot with DevBear and the rest of their tech team, they actually have an insanely solid technical team as well behind this.
I know they're like mostly anonymous or at least semi-anonymous. They're, as far as I know, a lot of their team comes from like very, very OG DeFi days. Some crossover with some of the earliest DeFi protocols that some of you guys may even be familiar with. I'm not going to make you say anything about them that you're not allowed to. But what I will ask is, what now that you've met the Barret chain team, what do you think about Barret chain in general, and what teams or what projects or protocols is Union aligned with to sort of like bring over and do the bridging for?
Yeah, so being on the team actually in person, much less degenerate than you might think. Like very well spoken, very kind, very helpful, very attentive. One of the few teams where you don't need to remind them about things. If they say they're busy, they come back themselves 3 days later and remember that you asked for something. And I think that's a big thing in crypto when everyone obviously has 1,000 DMs in their Telegram. So that's a very strong thing that they do around their ecosystem building. the builders chat feels very natural as well overall. It seems to be that they've attracted an actual community. On assets that we'll be bridging over, obviously our own token. But I'm really excited about the different BTC opportunities. If you actually look at what's being built around Babylon, Babylon is a Cosmos SDK chain, but Lombard I think as well. Native L2 is partially built on that. A lot of these peripherals being built around Bitcoin right now are Cosmos SDK based, IBC compatible. So I think there will lie a lot of opportunity to basically bring these different derivatives. And that's where I think Barret can compete very well. Because if you kind of look at the BTC landscape right now, I think you know this better, Stephen, as a DeFi, but I think Thorchain might have like the best suite, and the rest is all a lot more primitive than we actually find in like Solana land or the EVM stack.
You're saying Thorchain has the best suite of DeFi products?
I think not the best yet, but compared to like, if I'm thinking about how close do I get to actual Bitcoins that I hold, right? Without using Rep BTC or something.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
Then I think Bitcoin is very far behind.
Yes, yeah. You're really close to native BTC on Thorchain.
Yeah. So I think there's a good opportunity.
Yeah, on Ethereum, you're mostly dealing with like multiple levels of custodial risk. So if it's like Lombard is built on top of Babylon. Babylon is effectively a custodian. If you're using like TBTC, you're effectively Threshold or Wormhole is the custodian. If you're utilizing eBTC, not EtherFi, but the old one made by Badger DAO, then there's no custodian because there's no underlying Bitcoin. It's literally just a CDP minted against collateral. Whereas you have Thorchain, which is like actual BTC that you can bridge. I don't know if bridge is the right word there, but bring on or bring off chain utilizing their tech, which is really, really cool. And so are you suggesting that Barret Chain is going to have, one, be very BTC aligned, and two, maybe utilize Union for that BTC alignment?
Yeah, I don't want to give too much alpha, but that's an opportunity that I am super excited about overall, and to be building derivatives around this.
Okay, that is super exciting. Well, cool, very, very interesting. Now, going back to the launch of the token, when? I'm not sure if I can answer that, but I am curious.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure if you can answer that, but I don't know. I'm saying I'm not sure if you can answer when the token launch will be, but if you can give any information or hints.
Yeah. My counsel will absolutely kill me if I give actual dates. But I personally prefer to like get the token out as close to mainnet as we can. Basically, I'm not personally a fan of waiting 3 years with the token before releasing it. Mainnet, we're hoping, so the ceremony will last for at least a month longer, and then probably another month for mainnet to start. So we're kind of hoping for token to be shortly after that.
Okay, cool. So potentially still like end of Q4, early Q1. One question that I have is with bridges, there are a lot of bridge wrapped assets that then either become the de facto asset of the new chain or somehow interact with the like native, non-native assets that are already on those chains. With Union, will there be a bunch of like Union wrapped X, Union wrapped Y, Union wrapped assets, or will they be something more similar to or similar feeling to native assets? And how do you see sort of that going on?
Yeah. So at the base mode, like you kind of have to do wrapping if you're gonna mint, and if there's no canonical bridge for an asset already, then you must mint. This is no other way to get it on top. Then I'm kind of keen to like support more alloying type structures. What Osmosis is exploring right now, like accepting USDT, USDC, etc., and at least minting that in a single asset to reduce fragmentation. But really, like the solution to this doesn't really lie with bridge protocols, even though I would love for us to just be able to easily solve this. It also lies with the assets themselves. Like ideally, every asset would deploy a contract on every single chain and then allow bridges to mint certain amounts or in some form or another, like have a canonical representation. Not all assets do that regrettably. Actually, only very few do this. So I think right now the only way to like use a bridge that's not mint and burn is with liquidity pools or with intent-based bridging, and those struggle to like source the original assets because there needs to be another canonical bridge for that does the actual minting.
So in this case, is the Union goal or like path forward to go to newer chains like Barret Chain and try to say, hey, there are all these assets that want to come to Barret Chain that aren't on Barret Chain yet because it doesn't exist yet. And we would love to be their go-to bridge for these assets and bring these assets over. So when the assets do arrive on Barret Chain, they are effectively union-wrapped versions of those assets.
Yeah, and the argument to assets is basically if you want to have a canonical representation, get yourself on all the ecosystems, then the way you get minted has to be insanely decentralized and insanely secure, right? You don't want to give away your minting rights to a US company, basically. You only want to allow like true trustless protocols to perform this. So that's kind of our anticipation, that by first solving the decentralization and security portion, you don't just like protect end users, but you give tokens a proper avenue to establish canonical representations on other chains.
So that seems like a really heavy lift for already established chains. So what is Union's plan for like growth and expansion? Are you guys going to target some sort of like pre-existing L2s or look for like the super chain thesis? There's a lot of new chains coming out of the Optimism stack. What is your plan for expansion?
Yeah, basically we focus mainly on new ecosystems at the moment. And then we also support some of the most like the kind of larger ecosystems, because you do need to like have Ethereum, Arbitrum, Solana, etc. in your base package. There you have more of a liquidity war almost, right? Because there's already established bridge assets out there. For that, Union actually has a secondary mode to transfer assets, which I think is actually very cool, where you can basically do a crosses intent-based model over Union. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the cross and how that works.
Yeah. Is it across the one that's now Everclear? Or is that someone else? Mar, you know the answer to this.
Connects
With Everclear. That's right. Yeah. Across is Across doing the no? Oh, so Everclear is doing the clearing layer. I don't know. So Everclear is doing the clearing layer. What is Across doing?
They do intent-based. So basically, they have like a trading firm and HFT figure out how to get you the assets. That firm gives you the assets on the destination side, and then they use Across's Oracle to repay the HFT, the market maker, on the origin side. So you have these sophisticated parties who figure out how to do complex routing.
I want to know what you know. I want to pick someone's brain who's much smarter than me about how these things are differentiated. So, but what you're saying is you're using a similar method to Across. So you're going to, for assets that already have canonical tokens, you're going to allow for bridging those assets using a system similar to Across. In what way?
Yeah. So basically, different market makers will provide that canonical asset on the destination side. And Union's messaging layer is used to send back the information to the origin side on which market maker fulfilled this. And that gives you the property that a market maker gets paid back really quickly, in about 30 seconds to a minute. And an end user gets paid about 4 seconds after submitting the transfer. So the really urgent portion, which is like a regular retail user wants to get their money on the destination right now, that's solved immediately. But the cool thing is, because Union is so fast with messaging, the market maker gets actually paid back relatively quickly as well. Like a minute is nothing. Across at the moment takes about 30 minutes to an hour. And so for a market maker, that means that you need much less inventory to serve transfers, right? Because in a minute, you can run through a lot more while getting paid back. And in our case, we can then have these market makers figure out how to do all this complex routing across different chains. They're like rebalancing through exchanges, perhaps swapping, etc. Things that a smart contract-based protocol simply cannot do, right? Because it cannot do the risk models associated with it. And for our expansion plans, that allows us to basically provide our users with access to new ecosystems, but existing ecosystems, as well as not needing to compete on specific assets. So Union can effectively transfer an Excel USDC, for example, or canonical USDC with this as well.
And do you plan on building out your own front ends? I know there are some bridges that effectively have built the tech, and then they say, okay, now go build a front end on top of me. And some front ends are like just bridges. Some of them are bridge DEX combinations. What do you envision the user experience being like for you guys?
Yeah, we have written our own frontend already. So that's what's partially live on testnet that people are using right now. That's kind of the power user one. So the base capabilities like sending transfers, exploring what's going on, And then we have other projects at the moment building out more sophisticated stuff. So a fully fledged cross-chain DEX, but also basically a squid router competitor where you not only do transfers, but also immediate actions with it. Basically going down the chain abstraction rabbit hole.
Very cool. So if you're going the squid router route, they allow you to do cross-chain like transfer swaps. So it's like if you wanted to take USDC from Noble and then convert it to USDT on Arbitrum, you could do that. Do you anticipate or envision Union also sort of having these capabilities?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if you ever like bought bad kids NFTs or slot NFTs, but if you did, you went to Stargaze, an NFT app chain, and Stargaze right now actually did the experience really well, where you can select the NFT, you can select to pay with USDC, it'll perform the appropriate swaps for you. You can route from, I think, Ethereum, Arbitrum, even Solana. I can go from different chains. And so it's a really nice checkout experience without you needing to figure out how to get there. I kind of ideally want to bring that experience everywhere and just have apps detect like this wallet is live on like 20 different networks and allow you to select, all right, do the payments with the tokens that I have on this completely different network, figure out the route under the hood, and 20 seconds later, just get what you wanted.
Well, that brings us to a really important question, which is a combination of two questions. One, why isn't IBC bigger than it really is, than it currently is? Because it has some of the most interesting and useful and intuitive user experiences, which is like chain abstraction. You can swap between chains nearly seamlessly, even just through the wallet. Sometimes you don't even know that you're moving between chains. You can, like you said, buy an NFT from any of the chains you have assets on. Whereas when you go to EVM land, you are effectively restricted entirely to that chain unless you bridge. So the question being, one, why isn't IBC more popular? And two, when do you think that IBC experience is going to be on EVM?
Yeah. So, the IBC stack itself is like quite sophisticated. So it took us a long time to implement it for EVM ecosystems. That's a big thing. And the reason why it took basically us, a company, outsiders, not the original IBC team, to do so, is because Cosmos kind of underwent some pretty big changes in leadership / having no leadership whatsoever, right? So it's actually quite remarkable to see how incredibly successful IBC is without a centralized driving force behind this. Like really shows how it's actually the right direction and the closest thing we have to a grassroots interop movements compared to layer 0, wormhole, which are truly companies.
So the next question is EVM. When do you think EVM will have a user experience similar to IBC?
User experience, I don't know, but so we've been live on testnet, like we support EVMs. So with that, basically, in about 2 months, the real journey begins and the baseline connections are there. And then we have the ability to actually integrate this in sockets, Li-Fi, and start getting IBC out there, supported on different rollups. Then the journey kind of becomes, how do we best integrate this with specific ERC standards, right? There has, of course, been the whole movement to support Ethereum's L2-centric roadmap. And I think these two need to converge, to be honest. You've seen a lot of these proposals, things that Cosmos had already figured out originally, and things that Ethereum right now struggles with, right? I think the EVM ecosystem right now is kind of at the valley, like the maximum amount of pain, maximum amount of fragmentation, truly like suffering. And that's about where like Cosmos was, to be honest, 2 years ago, when people started growing bearish on it. And Cosmos is heading up now, where actually the UX is starting to become really good. Now, I'm not an atom bull personally, but actually like I'm looking to transfer all of these learnings from Cosmos to the EVM stack and prevent the UX disaster that previously occurred.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the growing sentiment, is that people learned a ton in Cosmos. They got like their education over there. They built incredibly cool stuff. They fixed a lot of fundamental DeFi problems. And then once they learned all of that and hardened themselves in the fires of the Cosmos, they then moved to EVM with all those lessons and then repair, big mama chain, Ethereum or EVM ecosystem, so please do that. I would love to, because Cosmos maybe has fixed liquidity fragmentation, but they have no liquidity. Ethereum and EVMs have a ton of liquidity, hyperfragmentation. So what is, this may not be related to Union, but it might be. What is the end goal with Union? So, right now you're sort of becoming maybe one of the canonical bridges for a lot of new chains. You're looking to create this new sort of bridging mechanism with ZK Proofs. All that is phenomenally fascinating. In like the future, what is your vision for Union and what it can do for crypto and DeFi?
Yeah. So the way I think actually where like architecture for apps is going to head to is that we're going to have thousands of app rollups, app chains, whatever you want to call them, kind of like microservice architecture in Web 2. For that to work and us not to succumb to UX hell, we need really fast interop and really secure interop. And the reason like fast is obvious, like that makes good UX. Like these different microservices, these chains can depend on each other if communication cost is almost zero. Really secure is what we need to not actually like keep user friends safe, we do, but we need it to make it scalable because we want developers to just be able to deploy their own blockchain and connect to the interop layer in, let's say, 30 minutes without being vetted by any company, right? Like it has to be completely anonymous, purely a code interface without ever needing to have BD teams talk to each other if you want to scale up to that. And that's what we're looking to support with Union, to actually have the first intro protocol where this is fully possible, where we don't need to support you, but you can integrate yourself with us. And that's already possible. Like if you want to open a connection to Union testnet, you can actually just run a rollup or app chain locally on your laptop and open the connection. Like you connect the smart contract, set up, you run the prover yourself, and you can receive funds. And you never need to talk with the Union team. We don't need to necessarily announce like we now support you, or in 3 months we're going to do it. You could just do all of this yourself, and we could actually not stop you from doing this. Like if you want to connect to Union, and there's nothing preventing us from doing that.
That's
One thing
really
I was
cool.
curious about, Karel, is you have this kind of vision of supporting this like horizontally scaled network of chains, right? Which I think sounds very interesting, and I guess to some extent more and more we are seeing it, right? DYDX moved over, they became their own Cosmos app chain. We had, Uniswap yesterday announced that they're going to have a Optimism L2. So we are seeing that. I'm curious, what are the advantages of that? Both for a protocol, why would a protocol like Uniswap want to be their own chain, but then also for token holders, right? People that have been holding, for example, some of these DeFi dinosaurs like Uni and DYDX, and maybe Aave will have their own chain. How does that actually benefit end users as well, token holders?
Yeah. Personally, I always felt when I like started using apps in some ecosystem I was late to, that I was paying fees to the current establishment, right? The first time I had that feeling was with Ethereum, where I was like, oh, sure, my shitcoins are making me money. But actually the ETH ICO OGs are even happier with this because ETH is going up even more. And so this transition to everything having its own chain basically means that like truly the community benefits the most, like people using the apps are the token holders of that app specifically. And that you're not spending hundreds of millions in gas fees to basically another community. So that's one portion that I think is very powerful. And while it's actually a very natural progression for any token-based project to at some point try to have its own chain or rollup to basically just control that and have no value leak out to anywhere else. From a developer perspective, like you can do much more when you're building your own chain. If you look at Skip Protocol's Oracle, for example, it's much faster than Bit or Chainlink, right? You can make higher performance applications. You can experiment more with different cryptographic primitives, right? Because you're not limited by the VM that you wrote your smart contract for. So it opens up the design space a lot more. And it's almost more akin to just doing regular backend developments instead of being in this tiny sandbox. So I think with that, like the design space can grow a lot more with applications, which I think solves part of the UX problem as well, right? Like it's not just about moving Web 2 to Web 3 by getting all of that decentralized. It's also for us to kind of learn why Web 2 really works, because indisputably the UX there is better, and translating that to Web 3.
You need chain abstraction in order for this reality to be useful.
Yeah, so
Every chain has every app or project has its own chain. Go ahead.
yeah, but that's exactly what I alluded to with kind of the Stargaze experience, right? Which is very close to full chain abstraction, where indeed, like, the routing is figured out for you, detecting which assets you could potentially use to pay for this is figured out for you. And really, like, this foundation you need for this is actually to have a shared idea of security between chains on how you communicate, right? You don't want certain bridges to be less secure than other bridges because that brings a risk to routing, right? And you just want to be able to tell a user, it doesn't matter what route you pick because they're all equally secure. So we're going to pick it for you. We're just going to show you one UX flow. That's the whole point of this simplification. And the other point in chain abstraction is just more work on various SDKs, getting it better integrated in UIs. So I think for a long time, it will seem like we're all just yapping about it. And you guys will have a bunch of speakers come on that are yapping about chain abstraction too. And at some point we have critical mass and all of a sudden it all starts falling into place.
Awesome. Now, Mar, I know you wanted to follow up on the last answer.
No. I was just asking, I think we have a lot of folks in our community and others who are quite interested in Union. You've mentioned a few potential ways people can get involved, but I'd love to just kind of like crystallize that a little bit. There's a test net. You said maybe mainnet in a couple of months' time. There's this ceremony. For someone who's kind of just learning about this, wants to play around, wants to try it out, what's available? Are there any kind of actionable things people can do today?
Yeah, so basically you can play around with our testnets at app.union.builds. As fast as integrated for various networks. You can do transfers and see what the experience is like. Then the ceremony, right now we're in the private portion, so we're handing out invitation keys for everyone to participate. So guys will send you some to, I think I already did, to distribute over your community. So that's a good way to participate. And in probably about a week and a half, that goes open to everyone. Then everyone can participate with the ceremony. Do expect, like, if you really want to participate at the public portion, that you need to be online the very second it goes open. Because right now our wait list is about, I think, 12K people that are constantly checking and waiting and signed up. And the ceremony itself takes a long time. Like, every participant has to do computation for a while. So we can only facilitate about 3,000 to 4,000 people getting in there. And then finally, like, if you're a builder and interested in intense solving, doing cross-chain trading or building protocols, you guys can reach out to us on Twitter, because we're looking for more builders to do projects with, to incubate and to build out the Union ecosystem.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for that explanation and for the invite codes. We'll make sure to find a fun way to distribute those to DeFi Dojo community members. And just to double check, you have to have either Linux or Mac OS to run those. Is that right? Luckily, Linux is available to anybody.
Correct. Yeah. Because it uses Docker under the hood, and Docker support on Windows is just absolute garbage.
My poor PC. All right, well, fantastic. Now, is there any last thing you want to say to newbies who are just now learning about Union?
Yeah, the only thing I can say is, like, check it out if just what we believe in aligns with you. Like, if you went into crypto because you truly love decentralization and you really want to own your own money and you like systems that can never be shut down, then check out Union, because that's what we stand for.
It's a fantastic case. Now, where can they find you? Twitter, Discord, Telegram? Where is the best way to get communications?
Yeah, I mainly shitpost on Twitter. So that's 0x Karel and at union_builds.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And everyone else out there, have a wonderful rest of your